Hey everybody, Rick Howard here. We're celebrating Independence Day here at the CyberWire with a 25% discount for our CyberWire Pro subscription. Go to the CyberWire, all one word, .com/pro and click the join button at the top right of the screen and enter the promo code July422. That's JULY space 4 space 22. This code is also good for a free month of the CyberWire Pro service. Make sure you never miss a thing and stay cyber aware by getting access to all of our public podcasts ad-free, my favorite part, as well as our exclusive CyberWire Pro podcast, CSO Perspectives. That's my podcast. And why aren't you a subscriber already? Plus, you get briefings, articles, and events. Visit thecyberwire.com/pro to redeem this offer. But hurry, you have until July 11th to claim the offer.
This episode of the CyberWire is made possible in part by Devo. With the cyber threat landscape constantly expanding, security teams face ever-evolving challenges when it comes to protecting their organizations. That's why Devo's cloud-native logging and security analytics platform is built to help transform security operations for today and beyond. And it's why they're always looking to learn more about how they can support and deliver value to the cybersecurity community. Devo's CEO, Mark Van Zadelhoff, touches on this and more through candid conversations with cybersecurity leaders on his podcast, Cyber CEOs Decoded. Tune in for the inside scoop. Devo, more data, more clarity, more confidence. And we thank Devo for sponsoring our show. More deniable DDoS attacks strike countries friendly to Ukraine. Predatory Sparrow's assault on Iran's steel industry. A callback phishing campaign impersonates security companies. The Anubis Network is back. Thomas Etheridge from CrowdStrike on the importance of outside threat hunting. Rick Howard weighs in on sentient AI. And a ransomware gang ups the ante. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Monday, July 11th, 2022. Lithuania's state energy provider, Ignitis Group, sustained a large distributed denial of service attack over the weekend, LRT reports. The attacks had been intermittent over more than a week, peaking on Saturday. Ignitis said that it has now overcome the attacks and that its control systems were not affected. Tech Monitor says that Killnet claimed responsibility for the operation. Lithuania, like the other Baltic states, has strongly supported Ukraine during Russia's war. It has recently stopped imports of Russian natural gas and just this morning imposed further restrictions on Russian shipments to its discontinuous Kaliningrad territory. Killnet also claimed responsibility for a DDoS attack against a website operated by the U.S. Congress, which experienced brief interruptions of public access between 9 and 11 a.m. Thursday. CyberScoop quotes the group's crowing over Telegram. They have money for weapons for the whole world, but not for their own defense. The degree of control Russian intelligence services exercise over Killnet remains unclear, but the group makes no secret of its determination to support Russia in its war against Ukraine. Wired has a brief overview of the group's activities, which have affected targets in Lithuania, Italy, the United States, Romania, and Norway. Killnet has declared war against these and other states who've been too sympathetic to Ukraine. For all of its online posturing, Killnet's activities haven't so far risen above a nuisance level. Flashpoint offers a suitably tepid appraisal of the group's work, saying, while Killnet's threats are often grandiose and ambitious, the tangible effects of their recent DDoS attacks have so far appeared to be negligible. The BBC reports that Predatory Sparrow, a nominally hacktivist group opposed to Iran's regime, which claimed to have disrupted operations at Iran's Mobarakeh Steel Company on June 27th, has posted videos of fires at the facility it claims were caused by its cyber attack. Mobarakeh Steel has minimized the effects of the attack, saying that its operations were not disrupted. CyberScoop reports that Predatory Sparrow has also dumped a set of documents it calls top secret and which it claims were taken from the Iranian facilities during the cyber attack. Those claims, as well as the authenticity of the documents themselves, remain unverified. Given the long-running tension between Iran and Israel, there's been widespread speculation in the Israeli press that Predatory Sparrow, which presents itself as an Iranian dissident group, is operating in the interest of Israeli intelligence services. The Israeli government has begun an investigation into the source of the stories, which may or may not have derived from leaks. CrowdStrike on Friday detected a callback phishing campaign that impersonates CrowdStrike and other security companies. The social engineering effort begins with an email that claims to have discovered a potential compromise on the recipient's network. The email provides a telephone number and invites the victim to call and arrange an audit of their workstations. It's unclear what might happen next, but the call will almost certainly invite the victim to install malware into their systems under the guise of a security update. CrowdStrike says, historically, callback campaign operators attempt to persuade victims to install commercial rat software to gain an initial foothold on the network. It's an old scam, and while one might think it played out, people continue to fall for it. The impersonation of a security firm is thought to add additional plausibility to the imposture. CrowdStrike points out with emphasis that CrowdStrike will never contact customers in this manner. Nor, one might add, will any other reputable security company. It's also worth noting that the campaign is purely fraudulent and doesn't involve any compromise of a security firm's networks. Security Affairs reports that the Anubis Network is back, providing command and control infrastructure for credential phishing that's targeting users in Portugal and Brazil. The initial contact is often by smishing, phishing with a text message, with a link to a bogus landing page designed to induce users to enter their credentials. And finally, researchers at the firm Resecurity reported over the weekend that the Black Cat gang is upping its ransom demands. The gang, a competitor of both the once and future Conti and the clearly active Lockbit 3.0, is now asking its victims for $2.5 million in exchange for, stopping all the stuff it gets up to. While Black Cat is a major player in the ransomware-as-a-service subsector of the criminal-to-criminal market, it isn't simply engaged in double extortion, but in what Resecurity calls quadruple extortion. The researchers explain that Black Cat's approach includes encrypting the victim's files, the first step, of course, in a classic ransomware attack. Victims are then offered a key to decrypt their files and restore access to their compromised data. The second aspect of Black Cat's attack involves data theft and the attendant threat of doxing, of releasing sensitive data. This is the now familiar double extortion. The third phase of a Black Cat attack is denial of service. The attackers conduct DDoS attacks to close down the victim's public websites. The DDoS, of course, will be called off when the victim pays. And the fourth and final phase of quadruple extortion is, according to Resecurity, harassment. The gang does reputational damage to the victim by calling customers, business partners, employees, and media to tell them the organization was hacked. This, too, increases the pressure on the victim to pay. Quadruple extortion is a noteworthy development in the C2C market. A number of ransomware operators have recently tended to concentrate on the second phase only, stealing data, or at least claiming to have stolen data, and then threatening to release the data if they're not paid off. It's easier than bothering with encryption. But Black Cat has gone in the opposite direction, opting for a more determined, more intense approach. In some respects, the larger ransom demands aren't surprising. The complexity and expense of quadruple extortion would seem to warrant a bigger ransom, if, that is, The hoods are going to realize any return on their investment. Conti and Lockbit don't think much of Black Cat, dismissing them as scammers, which seems cheeky, coming as it does from a bunch of criminal rivals who are engaged in a form of scamming themselves. Black Cat may have connections with other criminal elements, notably DarkSide and Black Matter. There's been some suspicion, in fact, that code overlaps apart. Black Cat may represent a rebranding of DarkSide after that gang's Colonial Pipeline hack drew more attention and heat than the old gang was comfortable with. And now, a word from our sponsor, Recorded Future. Staying one step ahead of the rapidly evolving threat landscape requires a constant flow of daily intelligence. To stay up to date on everything happening in the world of cybersecurity, join over 50,000 other security professionals who subscribe to the Cyber Daily. With daily email updates on the latest cybersecurity news, top threat actors, exploited vulnerabilities, suspicious IP addresses, and more, the Cyber Daily is the first thing security professionals check every morning. To learn more and subscribe for free, go to recordedfuture.com/cyber-daily. And we thank Recorded Future for sponsoring our show. And joining me once again is Rick Howard. He is the CyberWire's Chief Security Officer and also our Chief Analyst. Rick, always great to welcome you back.
Hey, Dave.
So a few weeks ago, one of Google's AI researchers, a guy by the name of Blake Lemoine, he got his 15 minutes of fame by claiming that the AI he was working on, which goes by the name Lambda, a language model designed to converse with people, he says that it became sentient.
Yep.
And he claimed that Lambda could pass the Turing Test. Now, I know you are a huge fan of Alan Turing, the guy who wrote that original paper that described the test. So what's going on here, Rick? Help me understand.
Well, you're right that my all-time favorite computer science hero is Alan Turing, right? In addition to the work he did on artificial intelligence in the 40s and 50s, he also mathematically proved that the modern-day computer could be built as a machine, a Turing machine, he called it back in the 1930s. Not to be confused with the Turing Test that we're talking about here, a Turing machine, right? So, And remember, we didn't have computers back then, but every computer we use today is a Turing machine, and we have him to thank for that. And let's not forget about his code-breaking efforts at Bletchley Park during World War II, breaking the German Enigma code. His efforts probably helped save, 20 million lives and shorten the war by years. But the Turing test is one of the first tests ever developed to determine if a machine can think.
You know, it reminds me of a segment from that great movie, The Imitation Game, which had Benedict Cumberbatch, more recently known as Dr. Strange. But in this movie, he was playing Alan Turing. Is that what we're talking about here?
Oh, my goodness, yes. This is a fantastic movie, and I'm so glad that you brought that scene up. I've been telling people for years that the scene is the best explanation I've ever heard that describes the Turing test and what we thought artificial intelligence meant back in the 1940s. Let's listen to a piece of it.
Of course, machines can't think as people do. A machine is different. The interesting question is, just because something thinks differently from you, does that mean it's not thinking? No, we allow for humans to have such divergences from one another. You like strawberries. I hate ice skating. You cry at sad films. I am allergic to pollen. What is the point of different tastes, different preferences, if not to say that our brains work differently, that we think differently? And if we could say that about one another, then why can't we say the same thing for brains built of copper and wire, steel?
Wow, Cumberbatch is so good in that scene, and a great movie overall, but this scene in particular, really good stuff.
Yeah, I'm so with you on that. And if our listeners haven't seen that movie yet, stop what you're doing, do not pass go, and consume that story. It's fabulous. But when Turing described in that scene the Turing test from his paper, Computing Machinery and Intelligence, published in the 50s, is what this Google engineer is talking about. He claims that his Lambda could pass the Turing test.
Now, Rick, I have been a fan of this kind of thing since the first time I played with Eliza on an old Apple II, right? Like I was hooked from that point on, which is like 80 lines of code or something. And it convinced me, 13-year-old me.
Sure, yeah. Me too. 40-year-old me, it convinced me.
So what does this mean? I mean, are we just years away from, Skynet becoming self-aware and destroying the world?
Yeah, we might be a few years away from that event, all right? Since Turing's work, the AI research community has developed more robust definitions for determining if machines can think. Some optimistic forecasters say that the singularity, that moment when a software wakes up and can fend for itself, is like 25 years away. More pessimistic forecasters say it's at least 100 years away. Still, if the Google engineer's assertion is true that Lambda can pass the Turing test, that's a pretty significant milestone. I mean, we've been circling this moment for about 5 years or so. I mean, when you close your eyes and squint a little bit and try not to be too critical, you could say that voice assistants like Alexa come pretty close. They're not there yet, but you can see it's right around the corner.
I can't help thinking if our part of our natural impulse as humans is to keep moving the goalposts. This reminds me of way back when they would say, well, the humans are the only species that uses tools. And since then, we found all kinds of animals use tools, right? So we had to find different ways to define humanity. And I wonder if we're going down that same path here. But it's going to be fascinating to follow for sure.
Well, I've been criticized about this before, right? And I'm not an artificial intelligence researcher by any means. And I'm sure there's better tests than the Turing test, right? But if I'm conversing with a voice assistant and I can't tell if it's a human or not, that's pretty close to me, and it's probably more in line with what Alan Turing had when he was researching this stuff back, 100 years ago. Yeah.
And does it matter if you can't?
It doesn't matter.
Difference?
That's it.
Right?
That's the key. I think it doesn't matter really that much.
Right. All right. Well, listen. Before I let you go, you have just added 4 new members to the CyberWire's hash table group this week. Real quick, tell us what the hash table is, and then who's coming on board.
That's right. As you know, we have a roster of experts who regularly visit the CyberWire hash table to discuss, important issues of the day. Really, the secret is they're mostly there to keep me honest when I go off on strange tangents, as I'm like to do, right? So you can see who they all are on the CyberWire webpage. We have over 30 of them, and the new folks include Ite Mayer. He's the Senior Director of Security Strategy at Cato Networks, and he's a recent CSO from Insights. That's a Rapid7 company. We have Vikrant Aurora. He's the new CISO at the Hospital for Special Surgery in New York. That's going to be interesting, a little extra commentary on that part of the world. All right.
Yeah.
We have Kurt John, the recently announced global CSO at the Expedia Group, but he's the former CISO for Siemens in the Americas, so we'll get that industrial control system expertise on the table. That's great. And then last but not least, William McMillan, also recently announced SVP of Security Product and Program Management at Salesforce, but he's just recently stepped down as the CISO for the CIA. So we're bringing in all kinds of expertise here to the CyberWire.
Those are some big guns there you got there, Rick.
Yes, we have.
Some big guns.
They don't know what they're in for.
That's right. That's right. Well, you can find out more about all of that over on our website, thecyberwire.com. It is part of CyberWire Pro. Rick Howard, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
And now, a word from our sponsors, KnowBe4. So, what's a con game? It's a fraud that works by getting the victim to misplace their confidence in the con artist. In the world of security, we call confidence tricks social engineering. And as our sponsors at KnowBe4 can tell you, human error is how most organizations get compromised. Where there's human contact, there can be con games. It's important to build the kind of security culture in which your employees are enabled to make smart security decisions. To do that, they need new school security awareness training. See how your security culture stacks up against KnowBe4's free phishing test. Get it at knowbe4.com/phishing test. That's knowbe4.com/phishing test. And we thank KnowBe4 for sponsoring our show. And I'm pleased to be joined once again by Thomas Etheridge. He's Senior Vice President of Services at CrowdStrike. Thomas, it's great to have you back. I want to touch base with you today on threat hunting. I know this is something you and your team focus on there at CrowdStrike. What sort of things can you share with us today?
Yeah, absolutely. Threat hunting is something that we focus in on to be able to provide capabilities to look for a needle in a stack of needles. And that really is what threat hunting is all about. We've seen threat actors take advantage of operating system capabilities and the ability to remain stealthy within an environment, bypass old traditional EDR controls, and remain persistent in an environment in order to carry out their tradecraft. The best way to defend against those types of tactics is through the capability in threat hunting.
What are some of the specifics here in terms of things people should be implementing?
A couple of things. Smaller organizations that maybe have a smaller security organization and that don't have the ability to perform threat hunting exercises on their own should really consider outsourced or third-party threat hunting organizations, or at least ask your managed service provider if that is a service that's provided with the offering that they deliver. Larger organizations can take advantage of threat hunting and outsourced threat hunting as well, because many organizations, when they perform threat hunts, will do so during normal business hours, Monday to Friday. They might run a threat hunt or two every month or every quarter. Outsourced threat hunting capabilities may be able to provide differentiated threat hunting 24/7, 365, around the clock, which is typically when threat actors are most active in off-business hours.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point there. I wonder, for folks who are kind of standing on the sideline here and haven't really engaged with threat hunting, what's your message to them?
Outsourced threat hunting is really meant to complement your existing security team and organization. They can be integrated in critical areas of the business, look across the telemetry that we have within your own environment, but also compare that to telemetry that they might be seeing in other parts, other services that they're offering to other customers that maybe are in the same vertical or geography that your organization is. So doing threat hunting on a broad scale really provides additional benefits and advantages that go beyond what you might be able to provide with your own team.
So looking at some of the basics here, can we start at the beginning? Why do threat hunting at all?
Dave, I think the answer is pretty straightforward. We've seen a 45% increase in interactive hands-on keyboard intrusion activity in the telemetry that we collect in our platform over the last year. Threat actors are very adept at using stolen credentials. They move quickly. We've seen breakout time down in the 98-minute time frame for e-crime threat actors that we track in our with our intelligence organization. The increase in the use of malware-free attacks allows threat actors, I should say, to remain stealthy and persistent and be able to go undetected with traditional security tools. So threat hunting is a huge differentiator in understanding and getting that visibility and being able to remediate and respond to incidents when they happen.
All right. Well, Thomas Etheridge, thanks for joining us. Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible, especially our supporting sponsor, Tyke, the leading API and service management platform for managing API security. Sign up for a free trial at tyke.io/security. That's tyk.io/security. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. Don't forget to check out the Grumpy Old Geeks podcast, where I contribute to a regular segment called Security. I join Jason and Brian on their show for a lively discussion of the latest security news every week. You can find Grumpy Old Geeks where all the fine podcasts are listed. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland at the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Liz Irvin, Elliot Peltzman, Trey Hester, Brandon Karp, Eliana White, Peru Prakash, Justin Sabi, Rachel Gelfand, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yellen, Nick Galecki, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Hey everybody, Dave here. Are your sales and marketing teams tasked with ever-growing brand awareness and lead gen goals? The CyberWire is a great way to put your message into the ear of decision-makers across cyber and help fill your funnel. We have great sponsorship opportunities available, but we're filling up fast. Contact our team now to learn more about how sponsorship of the CyberWire can help build your business at thecyberwire.com/sponsor.